Welcome back to Lore to Action, where we dive deep into gaming's most thrilling adventures. Today, we venture into the legendary realm of Hyrule to explore the complete story of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Over the next couple hours, we'll uncover the epic tale of the hero of time, from the ancient creation myths that shaped the world to the timeline-splitting conclusion that would echo through generations of heroes. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's embark on this timeless journey together. The foundation of creation. Before we delve into Link's legendary adventure, we must first understand the cosmic forces that shaped the world of Hyrule itself. Long before any hero drew breath, before any princess ruled, and before any villain sought power, there was only the void of the universe. Into this emptiness came three divine beings whose actions would create the very foundation upon which all future legends would unfold. The creation myth tells us that three golden goddesses, named Din, Nayru, and Farore, descended from the heavens to create the land of Hyrule. Each goddess contributed a fundamental aspect to the world's formation, their divine essences becoming eternally woven into the fabric of reality itself. Din, goddess of power, creates the earth, rock escarpments, and soil. Farore, goddess of courage, gives green to the lands, fostering forests and undergrowth. Nayru, goddess of wisdom, gives the world a sky, blossoming blue over everything. These three divine acts of creation established not merely the physical world, but the spiritual principles that would govern all life within it. When their work was complete, the goddesses prepared to return to the heavens. But before their departure, they left behind a sacred relic that would embody their combined power and serve as the ultimate prize for any who might seek to rule over their creation. The game's instruction booklet provides the creation myth, explaining how three golden goddesses named Din, Nayru, and Farore descended to create the land of Hyrule and then created the Triforce and imbued it with the essence of their power. The Triforce, formed of three golden triangles arranged in perfect harmony, represented the divine balance necessary for just rule. It consists of three equilateral triangles that are joined to form a large equilateral triangle. In-universe, it represents the essences of the golden goddesses, Din, Nayru, and Farore, who created Hyrule. Imbued with divine power, it is capable of granting any wish to anyone who possesses it. Each piece embodied one of the goddess's virtues: the Triforce of power from Din, the Triforce of wisdom from Nayru, and the Triforce of courage from Farore. But the Triforce came with a cosmic caveat. If one with a pure soul touches it, the land will enter eternal prosperity. However, if someone with an unbalanced heart were to touch the sacred relic, it would split apart, with each piece going to those who most embodied its particular virtue. This divine safeguard would prove crucial in the events to come. As revealed by Rauru, the original sages were the ones who built the Temple of Time to protect the Triforce against those who would use it for evil. The Triforce was hidden in the Temple of Light, the only sage temple to be built in the sacred realm. These ancient sages, wise beings chosen to guard the sacred relic, understood that such immense power required equally immense protection. They constructed an elaborate security system around the Triforce. Therefore, it was protected with a seal controlled by the Master Sword, which evil cannot touch, and the Door of Time, which could not be opened unless one possessed the three spiritual stones, the Ocarina of Time and knowledge of the Song of Time. Each element of this protection served as both barrier and test, ensuring that only one truly worthy could access the sacred relic. The Master Sword itself became central to this divine security. Known as the Blade of Evil's Bane, it was forged with the power to repel darkness and could only be wielded by one pure of heart. The sword would serve as the final key to the sacred realm, but its removal would require not just worthiness, but the proper time and circumstance. The Hyrulean Civil War and its aftermath. Approximately 10 years before Ocarina of Time's story begins, there was a war known as the Hyrulean Civil War. This war explains the origins of several characters and provides extra backstory to their motives. Though the details of this conflict remain shrouded in mystery, its consequences would directly shape the events of our tale. During this brutal war, a young Hylian woman found herself fleeing through the chaos with her infant son. Seeking sanctuary from the violence that engulfed the land, she made her way to the one place in Hyrule that had remained untouched by the conflict, the Kokiri Forest. This sacred grove, protected by the great Deku tree and inhabited by eternal children known as the Kokiri, had stood as a bastion of peace amid the surrounding turmoil. The woman's journey proved to be her last. Gravely injured, as the Deku tree sprout later explains, her only choice was to entrust the child to the Deku tree, the guardian spirit of the forest. The great Deku tree could sense that this was a child of destiny, whose fate would affect the entire world, and so he took him into the forest. After the mother passed away, the baby was raised as a Kokiri. This child was Link, and though he would grow up believing himself to be Kokiri, he was actually Hylian, a member of the race blessed with pointed ears that allowed them to hear the voices of the gods. This heritage would prove crucial in the trials to come, for it was the Hylian bloodline that carried the potential for heroism and the ability to wield the Master Sword. The Civil War's end brought an uneasy peace to Hyrule under the rule of the King of Hyrule. The kingdom began to rebuild, but the scars of conflict ran deep. It was into this recovering world that various peoples and cultures began to establish their place in the new order. Among these were the Gerudo, a desert-dwelling tribe of women warriors who, according to their ancient custom, gave birth to only one male every 100 years. That male, born in the aftermath of the Civil War, was Ganondorf Dragmire, who would become the king of the Gerudo. From an early age, Ganondorf displayed not only exceptional physical prowess, but also a hunger for power that would grow with each passing year. As he matured into his role as leader of his people, his ambitions began to extend far beyond the borders of the Gerudo Desert, though the specific details of his early rise remain largely unrecorded in the kingdom's histories. Link's childhood in Kokiri Forest. In the Kokiri Forest, all the forest children have their own guardian fairies, bestowed upon them by the great Deku tree, except for one boy named Link. This absence marked Link as different from his supposed siblings, though he could not understand why. The other Kokiri, eternal children who never aged, had their fairy companions from birth, these magical beings serving as guides, friends, and connections to the spiritual world around them. Link's lack of a fairy made him an outsider even among the accepting Kokiri. Some whispered that he wasn't truly one of them, though none could say why. The great Deku tree, ancient and wise, watched over the unusual boy with special interest, knowing the truth of his origins and the destiny that awaited him. Link has recently been plagued by nightmares of Princess Zelda fleeing from an evil man clad in black on horseback. These prophetic dreams troubled the young hero-to-be, showing him visions of events yet to come. In these nightmares, he saw a young girl with golden hair running through a castle courtyard, her face filled with terror as a dark figure on horseback pursued her. Though he had never seen this girl before, something about her plight called to him, as if he were meant to help her. The great Deku Tree observed these changes in Link with growing concern. The ancient guardian could sense a darkness approaching, a malevolent force that threatened not just the peaceful forest, but all of Hyrule. The time had come to reveal Link's true purpose, but first, the boy would need a companion for the journey ahead. It was then that the great Deku Tree summoned a fairy unlike any other. Navi, as she would come to be known, was chosen specifically to guide Link through the trials that lay ahead. The game opens with the hero's mentor and protector, the great Deku Tree, sending a fairy, Navi, to inform the hero about his new responsibilities. The great Deku Tree's curse. Navi awakens Link from a nightmare in which he watches a man in black armor pursuing a young girl on horseback, and is brought to the great Deku Tree, who has been cursed by a wicked man of the desert, and that Link must stop him. The ancient guardian's usual luminous presence had dimmed, his mighty branches withering under the influence of a terrible curse. After gathering the necessary equipment, Navi escorts the hero to the great Deku Tree, who explains that Ganondorf has come to the land of Hyrule and is vying for power. He tells the hero that Ganondorf has cursed him and then proceeds to ask the hero to break the curse. The great Deku Tree revealed that this curse was the work of Ganondorf, the Gerudo king, who had come demanding the spiritual stone of the forest, the Kokiri's emerald. When the great Deku Tree refused to surrender this sacred treasure, recognizing the evil in Ganondorf's heart, the dark sorcerer retaliated with a terrible curse. A parasitic creature was placed within the ancient tree's body, slowly consuming him from within. The great Deku Tree knew that even if the curse were broken, it would be too late to save his life, but he hoped that Link might succeed where he had failed, in stopping Ganondorf's quest for power. Before Link could face this challenge, he would need proper equipment. The Kokiri sword and Deku shield became his first tools of heroism, simple weapons suited to his small stature, but imbued with the forest's blessing. With these basic implements and Navi as his guide, Link prepared to enter the belly of the great Deku Tree and confront the source of the curse. Located in Kokiri Forest, inside the Deku Tree, is the first dungeon of the game and can be entered after obtaining the Kokiri sword and Deku shield and speaking with the Deku Tree. The dungeon mostly features simpler enemies such as Deku Baba and Skulltulas. It also includes many easier puzzles to ease the player into the game. The journey through the great Deku Tree's interior proved to be Link's first real test of courage and skill. The hero then enters the great Deku Tree. Inside, he receives the fairy slingshot and fights his way to the dungeon's boss and source of the curse, Queen Goma, the parasitic armored arachnid, and defeats her. Queen Goma, a massive spider-like creature with a single burning eye, had made her nest in the tree's highest chamber, feeding off the ancient guardian's life force. The battle against Queen Goma required Link to use all his newfound skills. The creature's armored hide protected it from direct attacks, but its eye proved vulnerable when stunned by the fairy slingshot. Through quick thinking and careful timing, Link managed to defeat the parasitic beast, freeing the great Deku Tree from its torment. After the hero's success, the great Deku Tree reveals that even though Link's efforts were successful, he was doomed from the start. Though Link had broken the curse and destroyed its source, the damage to the great Deku Tree was too severe. The ancient guardian was dying, but he used his final moments to reveal crucial truths to the young hero. He then tells the tale of Ganondorf and the Triforce, and tells the hero he must travel to Hyrule Castle to meet the Princess Zelda, after which he dies. The great Deku Tree explained the legend of the Triforce and warned Link of Ganondorf's true intentions. The Gerudo King sought not just the spiritual stones, but the ultimate power they would unlock. Only by working with Princess Zelda could Link hope to prevent this catastrophe? With his dying breath, the great Deku tree bestowed upon Link the Kokiri's emerald, the spiritual stone of the forest. This sacred gem was the first of 3 keys needed to open the door of time in the Temple of Time. As the ancient guardian's light faded forever, Link understood that his childhood in the peaceful forest had come to an end. He was no longer just a boy among the Kokiri. He was a hero with a destiny to fulfill. The hero leaves his home in Kokiri Forest, but is stopped by Saria on the bridge leading out. She gives him the fairy Ocarina and tells him to remember her. Saria, Link's closest friend among the Kokiri, sensed that this parting might be permanent. The simple wooden ocarina she pressed into his hands would prove far more significant than either of them could have imagined, for music would become one of Link's most powerful tools in the adventures ahead. Meeting Princess Zelda. The hero then travels to Hyrule Castle and indeed meets Princess Zelda. She tells him of her dream and about the spiritual stones and the Ocarina of Time. The journey from Kokiri Forest to Hyrule Castle marked Link's first steps into the wider world. Crossing Hyrule Field, he encountered new peoples and challenges that began to broaden his understanding of the kingdom he was destined to protect. At Hyrulean Castle, Link's forest origins initially made him an object of curiosity among the guards and nobles. A boy in green emerging from the legendary forest was unusual enough to grant him an audience with the princess herself. When Link finally stood before Princess Zelda in the castle courtyard, both children recognized something familiar in each other, though the exact nature of this recognition remains a matter of interpretation. Some scholars suggest this could indicate their shared destiny, while others point to Zelda's prophetic dreams as the source of her immediate trust in the forest boy. In Ocarina of Time, Link meets up with Princess Zelda in the courtyard of Hyrule Castle as a child. Zelda and Link look through the window and see the Gerudo King Ganondorf bowing before her father, Hyrule's unnamed king. This meeting occurred at a crucial moment, as Ganondorf himself was present in the castle, outwardly pledging allegiance to the King of Hyrule while secretly plotting his downfall. Zelda notes to Link that she had a dream that prophesied Ganondorf's takeover of Hyrule by stealing the Triforce, but the King of Hyrule did not believe her story. The young princess possessed a gift of prophecy that allowed her to see glimpses of possible futures. Her dreams had shown her visions of Hyrule in flames, ruled by the very man her father trusted as an ally. When she tried to warn the king, he dismissed her concerns as the imaginings of a child. Zelda's dream had also shown her the solution to Ganondorf's threat, a young hero in green who would come from the forest to help her protect the Triforce. When Link appeared before her, she immediately recognized him as the boy from her prophetic visions. Together, they devised a plan to prevent Ganondorf from achieving his goals. She then asks him to collect the other 2 spiritual stones. The spiritual stones served as keys to the Door of Time, which protected the entrance to the sacred realm where the Triforce was hidden. Zelda reasoned that if they could gather all 3 stones before Ganondorf, they could claim the Triforce first and use its power to protect Hyrule. After this meeting, the hero is taught the song Zelda's Lullaby on his ocarina by Impa, who leads him out of the castle and shows him the way to Kakariko village, which lies beneath the Goron's home in Death Mountain. Impa, Zelda's guardian and last member of the Shaker tribe, recognized the importance of Link's mission. The melody she taught him would serve as proof of his connection to the royal family and open doors that would otherwise remain closed. Zelda's lullaby was more than just a song. It served as a key that would prove Link's worthiness to those who protected the remaining spiritual stones. The gentle melody carried within it the blessing of the royal family and would be recognized by the guardians of both the Goron's ruby and the Zora's sapphire. Based on the reactions Link receives throughout his journey, we can infer that this lullaby held deep significance in Hyrulean culture. likely serving as a symbol of the royal family's protection and authority. The quest for the spiritual stones. Link's journey to collect the remaining spiritual stones took him to the far corners of Hyrule, introducing him to the diverse peoples and cultures that called the kingdom home. Each stone was protected by a different race, and each would test Link's courage, wisdom, and determination in unique ways. Death Mountain and the Gorons. He meets the leader of the Gorons, Darunia, and helps him deal with a problem in Dodongo's cavern. The path to Death Mountain proved treacherous, the volcanic peak home to the rock-eating Goron tribe. These boulder-like beings had sealed themselves within their city due to a crisis that threatened their very survival. The Dodongo's cavern is located partway up Death Mountain. After getting the Goron's bracelet from Darunia, Link can enter the cavern by using a bomb flower. Darunia, the imposing leader of the Gorons, initially refused to see Link, consumed with worry over his people's plight. The Dodongo's cavern, their primary source of food, had become infested with dangerous Dodongos that prevented the Gorons from harvesting the rocks they needed to survive. When Link played Zelda's lullaby, however, Darunia's demeanor changed completely. The melody reminded him of an old song he had learned long ago, and he began to dance with joy. This display of the lullaby's power convinced Darunia that Link was indeed a messenger from the royal family, sent to help in their time of need. This dungeon introduces many new fire-based enemies like the Dodongo and Fire Keys, making a Hyrulean shield helpful. The journey through Dodongo's cavern tested Link's ability to think creatively and use the environment to his advantage. The cavern's volcanic nature provided bomb flowers that could be used as weapons, while the Dodongos themselves required specific strategies to defeat. The dungeon's puzzles centered around the use of bombs to clear blocked passages and trigger switches. Link learned to think three-dimensionally, using the cavern's multiple levels to solve increasingly complex challenges. The centerpiece of the cavern was a massive chamber, where Link had to use bomb flowers to destroy a wall that blocked the flow of lava, restoring the natural balance of the mountain. King Dodongo, the massive reptilian beast that ruled the cavern's depths, posed Link's greatest challenge yet. The creature's armored hide could only be penetrated by explosives, requiring Link to carefully time his attacks while avoiding the monster's rolling charges and fire breath. Victory came through persistence and clever use of the bomb flowers scattered throughout the arena. Afterward, Darunia gives him the spiritual stone of fire, or Goron's ruby, in return. Darunia, overjoyed at the restoration of his people's food source, declared Link an honorary brother of the Gorons. The Goron's ruby, a massive red gem that pulsed with inner fire, became the second key needed to open the door of time. Zora's domain and the Zoras. The path to the third spiritual stone led Link to Zora's domain, home of the aquatic Zora people. Unlike the warm reception he had received from Darunia, Link's arrival at the domain was met with concern and urgency. The Zoras were facing a crisis that threatened not just their own survival, but the water supply for much of Hyrule. As Princess Ruto is Link's primary objective, her help is needed to open certain doors and keep switches pressed. The dungeon item, the boomerang, also becomes very helpful for defeating the electric-based creatures throughout the dungeon. Princess Ruto, the headstrong daughter of King Zora, had disappeared inside Jabu Jabu's belly, the patron deity of the Zora people. This massive fish, normally gentle and protective, had become sick and violent, threatening to destroy the delicate ecosystem of the domain. King Zora, desperate to save his daughter and his people's guardian, sought Link's help. The young hero would need to enter Jabu Jabu's belly and discover the source of the creature's illness. This mission would prove to be unlike anything Link had faced before, as he would be fighting not just monsters, but the very environment itself. Inside Jabu Jabu, Link discovered a world of bioelectrical creatures and organic puzzles. The fish's digestive system had become a maze of chambers and passages, each more dangerous than the last. Electric jellyfish floated through the corridors, while parasitic creatures had made their homes in the walls themselves. Princess Ruto, when Link finally found her, proved to be both helpful and demanding. Her intimate knowledge of Jabu Jabu's anatomy was essential for navigating the labyrinthine interior, but her royal bearing sometimes put her at odds with Link's more practical approach to problem solving. Together, they made their way deeper into the fish, searching for the source of its corruption. Defeating dungeon boss Baronade rewards the player with the Zora's Sapphire and a third heart container. Baronade, a massive jellyfish-like parasite, had attached itself to Jabu Jabu's nervous system, causing the fish's erratic behavior. The creature's electrical attacks and protective tentacles made it a formidable opponent, but Link's boomerang proved effective at stunning its various components. The battle required careful observation and timing, as Link had to destroy Baronade's satellite jellyfish before he could damage the main body. Each phase of the fight introduced new attack patterns and strategies, testing Link's ability to adapt under pressure. When Baronade finally fell, Jabu Jabu's health was restored, and the fish returned to its role as protector of the Zoras. She then gives him the spiritual stone of water, or Zora's Sapphire, in return, and mentions it to be an engagement ring. Princess Ruto's gift of the Zora's Sapphire came with an unexpected declaration. In Zora custom, the sapphire served as an engagement ring, and by accepting it, Link had unknowingly agreed to marry the princess. Though this arrangement would never be formalized, it established a bond between Link and the Zora people that would prove significant in years to come. The door of time opens. The hero then hurries back to Hyrule Castle. At the gate, however, he is stopped by Zelda, who is riding away with Impa as if escaping. Link's return to Hyrule Castle with all 3 spiritual stones should have been a moment of triumph, but instead he arrived to find chaos. Guards lay unconscious at the gates, and smoke rose from within the castle walls. The sound of hoofbeats announced Zelda's desperate flight. The princess manages to throw an object to the hero before disappearing into the distance. As Zelda's horse galloped past, she hurled something toward Link, a blue object that sparkled in the sunlight. Even in her haste, she had managed to keep the most important part of their plans safe. Ganondorf then comes out of the town and asks about the direction the princess went. The hero attempts to confront him, and Ganondorf defeats him easily, then rides off. Link draws his sword in answer, exhibiting courage in the face of evil. Merely knocking Link aside, Ganondorf continues in pursuit of Zelda. The encounter with Ganondorf was Link's first face-to-face meeting with true evil. The Gerudo King's power was overwhelming, his dark magic crackling around him like a living thing. When Link bravely drew his sword, Ganondorf barely seemed to notice the gesture, swatting the young hero aside as if he were nothing more than an insect. The hero retrieves the object, which is in fact the Ocarina of Time, and learns how to play the Song of Time. Embedded in the ocarina when he picks it up is a memory of Zelda, recorded by the princess herself. She has taught him the Song of Time. The object Zelda had thrown was the legendary Ocarina of Time itself, crafted from blue crystal and imbued with temporal magic. When Link touched the instrument, Zelda's voice echoed in his mind, teaching him the sacred Song of Time that would open the door of time. He continues, undaunted, to the Temple of Time, where he opens the door of time and finds the Master Sword. Link goes to the Temple of Time, where he knows he is meant to be. He had no idea the spiritual stones would hover on a pedestal made for them. Playing the Song of Time, the song resonates in the chamber with the 3 spiritual stones: the Kokiri Emerald, the Goron's Ruby, and the Zora's Sapphire. The Temple of Time stood as a monument to the ancient sages, its architecture reflecting the sacred geometry of the Triforce itself. When Link placed the 3 spiritual stones on their designated pedestals and played the Song of Time, the temple responded with a resonance that seemed to come from the very foundations of the world. The door of time, sealed for countless generations, slowly ground open to reveal the chamber beyond. Entering the chamber, light shines down upon the Master Sword, the gateway to the spirit realm. Zelda intended for Link to use it to destroy any future evil. The Master Sword waited in its sacred pedestal, the blade of evil's bane, surrounded by an aura of holy light. This legendary weapon had been forged specifically to combat the forces of darkness, its very essence antithetical to evil in all its forms. After removing the Master Sword from the pedestal of time, the hero falls into a deep sleep for 7 years, during which time Ganondorf enters the sacred realm, which the hero opened, and takes the Triforce for himself. When Link draws the Master Sword, the effect is not what she intended. By opening the chamber, Link unknowingly gives Ganondorf access. Instead of pursuing Zelda, he has followed Link and can now access the spirit realm. The 7-year sleep and Ganondorf's rise. When Link draws the Master Sword, he enters the spirit realm and is sealed away for 7 years. As this happens, Ganondorf also enters the spirit realm. The Master Sword's magic recognized that Link was too young to serve as the hero of time. His spirit was sealed within the sacred realm, where he would grow in both body and power until he was ready to face the darkness that had been unleashed. The spirit realm is where the legendary Triforce is supposed to be guarded by 7 sages. It was created by the 3 goddesses and represents balance. They left it behind when they ascended into the heavens. Ganondorf's entry into the sacred realm marked the beginning of Hyrule's darkest age. The Gerudo king had manipulated events perfectly, using Link's pure intentions to open the path he could never have accessed on his own. Zelda explains that Ganondorf's heart was unbalanced, causing the Triforce to split into 3 pieces. When Ganondorf touched the complete Triforce, its divine wisdom recognized the corruption in his heart. The sacred relic split apart to protect itself, with each piece seeking out the person who most embodied its particular virtue. Ganondorf, driven by his lust for dominance, received the Triforce of power. The Triforce of wisdom went to Princess Zelda, while the Triforce of courage would eventually find its way to Link. Though Ganondorf had not gained the complete Triforce as he had hoped, the Triforce of power alone granted him strength beyond mortal comprehension. With this divine might, he swept across Hyrule like a plague, crushing all resistance and establishing himself as the king of evil. The once green fields of Hyrule turned brown and withered under his malevolent influence, while creatures of darkness roamed freely across the land. Castle Town, once a bustling center of commerce and culture, became a haunted ruin populated only by re-deads and other undead horrors. The castle itself was transformed into a fortress of darkness, its spires reaching toward the sky like grasping claws. Ganondorf's power extended beyond mere military conquest. He had corrupted the very spiritual essence of the land itself. During these 7 years of darkness, the peoples of Hyrule suffered terribly. The Gorons were enslaved and forced to work in dangerous mines, while many Zoras were frozen solid by the evil king's magic. The Kokiri retreated deeper into their forest, protected only by the great Deku tree's spiritual successors. Those who could hide did so, while others fled to remote corners of the kingdom to escape Ganondorf's tyranny. The hero of time awakens. Rauru explains that Link's spirit was sealed for 7 years until he was old enough to wield the Master Sword and defeat Ganondorf, who has taken over Hyrule. When Link finally awakened, it was not in the Temple of Time where he had drawn the sword, but in the Chamber of Sages within the sacred realm. Rauru, the Sage of Light and last survivor of the ancient sages, greeted the hero and explained the catastrophic changes that had occurred during his slumber. While most of the sages in Ocarina of Time are new ones, Rauru is believed to the last of the original sages. It appears that Rauru is meant to act as a guide for both the hero of time and the new sages who awaken. Rauru's role as mentor extended beyond simply explaining the current situation. He helped Link understand his new adult body and the enhanced abilities that came with it, while also preparing him for the monumental task ahead. The 7 sages have the ability to imprison Ganondorf in the sacred realm, but 5 are unaware of their identities as sages. Link is returned to the Temple of Time and meets the mysterious Sheik, who guides him to free 5 temples from Ganondorf's control and allow their sages to awaken. The awakening of the sages would require Link to venture into 5 corrupted temples scattered across Hyrule. Each temple had been twisted by Ganondorf's evil influence, filled with monsters and traps designed to prevent anyone from reaching the sacred chambers within. Only by purifying these temples could the sages within them awaken to their true power and destiny. The mysterious Sheik. Upon returning to the Temple of Time, Link encountered a mysterious figure who would become his guide through the trials ahead. Sheik, a member of the shadow-walking Sheikah tribe, possessed knowledge of ancient songs and the locations of the corrupted temples. This enigmatic warrior appeared wherever Link needed guidance most, always seeming to know exactly where the hero should go next. Sheik's knowledge extended far beyond simple directions. The Sheikah taught Link powerful melodies that could transport him instantly across great distances, songs that resonated with the very fabric of Hyrule itself. Each melody was tied to a specific location, allowing Link to travel between areas that would otherwise take days to reach on foot. The relationship between Link and Sheik was one of mutual respect and shared purpose. Though Sheik often spoke in riddles and rarely revealed personal details, there seemed to be an underlying familiarity in their interactions that Link couldn't quite place. The Sheikah's fighting style was graceful and efficient, suggesting years of rigorous training in the ancient arts of the Shadow Clan. This mastery of combat techniques could imply that Sheik had access to knowledge and training that few others possessed, though the source of such expertise remains mysterious until later revelations. The Forest Temple and Saria's awakening. Link befriended all 5 sages as a child. His childhood friend, Saria, the sage of the Forest Temple. Darunia, the sage of the Fire Temple. Ruto, the sage of the Water Temple. Impa, the sage of the Shadow Temple. And Naburu, leader of the Gerudo in Ganondorf's absence, the sage of the Spirit Temple. After learning the minuet of forest from Sheik, Link can enter the Forest Temple. The return to the Kokiri Forest was bittersweet for Link, as he discovered that his childhood home had changed dramatically during his 7-year absence. The once peaceful forest had become twisted and dark, its pathways rearranged and filled with dangerous creatures that had never been there before. The other Kokiri, still children while Link had grown into an adult, initially didn't recognize their former friend. His adult form made him appear as a stranger to those who had known him since childhood. Only when they heard him speak or saw familiar mannerisms did some begin to realize who he truly was. Saria, Link's dearest friend from childhood, was nowhere to be found in the village. The other Kokiri spoke in whispers about how she had ventured into the lost woods months ago and never returned. Some claimed they could still hear her ocarina playing deep within the maze-like forest, but none dared venture far enough to confirm these reports. This is the first dungeon with small keys and tougher enemies, like the Stalfos. The forest temple marked a significant escalation in the challenges Link would face. Unlike the relatively straightforward dungeons of his youth, this ancient structure was a labyrinth of interconnected rooms, rotating corridors, and complex puzzles that required both wit and skill to solve. The temple's architecture seemed to defy conventional logic, with staircases that led to walls, doors that opened onto empty air, and passages that somehow connected to rooms that should have been impossible to reach. The building itself seemed alive, responding to Link's presence by shifting and changing its internal layout. Stalfos warriors, animated skeletons wielding sword and shield, proved to be formidable opponents. These undead guardians retained the combat skills they had possessed in life, forcing Link to rely on more than just brute strength to defeat them. The battles required careful timing, strategic positioning, and the use of various items to exploit the Stalfos' weaknesses. After finding the fairy bow, Link destroys each of the 4 Poe sisters to open the way to the depths of the temple and face Phantom Ganon. The fairy bow became an essential tool for both combat and puzzle solving within the temple. Its arrows could trigger distant switches, light torches, and most importantly, damage enemies that were otherwise out of reach. The 4 Poe sisters, ghostly beings who had taken residence in the temple's twisted halls, each guarded a different section of the complex. These spirits could phase in and out of the physical world, appearing and disappearing at will, while attacking with bolts of dark energy. Defeating them required Link to use the bow's power to strike them during the brief moments when they materialized. Each Poe sister had a distinct personality and fighting style. One would spin rapidly while firing projectiles. Another would split into multiple copies to confuse her target. A third would hover just out of reach while raining down attacks. And the fourth would use the temple's rotating rooms to her advantage. Only by adapting his tactics to each encounter could Link hope to succeed. The battle against Phantom Ganon served as a preview of the ultimate confrontation to come. This dark reflection of Ganondorf possessed many of the evil king's powers, but lacked his master's full strength and cunning. The Phantom could phase between dimensions, appearing in paintings on the temple walls before emerging to attack with bolts of dark magic. Link learned to read the subtle signs that indicated which painting the Phantom would emerge from, allowing him to position himself for counterattacks. When Phantom Ganon materialized in the chamber's center, the battle became a deadly game of magical tennis, with Link using his sword to deflect the Phantom's energy bolts back at their source. This awakens Saria as a sage and grants Link the forest medallion alongside a heart container. When Phantom Ganon was finally defeated, the corruption that had twisted the forest temple began to lift. Saria appeared before Link in the Chamber of Sages, her childhood form now surrounded by an aura of divine power that marked her as the Sage of Forest. The reunion between Link and Saria was both joyful and melancholy. Though she was happy to see her old friend had grown strong and brave, she understood that their paths had diverged forever. As a sage, Saria was bound to her sacred duty, while Link still had much of his journey ahead of him. He can then return to the Temple of Time to learn the Prelude of Light from Sheik. The Prelude of Light granted Link the ability to return instantly to the Temple of Time from anywhere in Hyrule. This would prove invaluable in the trials ahead, as he would often need to travel between the world of his childhood and his adult form. The Fire Temple and Darunia's sacrifice. With the help of the Goron Tunic, Link enters Death Mountain Crater, where Sheik teaches him the Bolero of Fire. The journey to the Fire Temple required preparation that Link's younger self could never have managed. The Goron Tunic, woven with fireproof fibers, protected him from the intense heat of Death Mountain's crater, while his adult strength allowed him to wear the heavy garment without being encumbered. Death Mountain had changed dramatically during Ganondorf's reign of terror. The once stable volcanic peak now showed signs of increased activity, with rivers of lava flowing where solid rock had been before. The very air shimmered with heat, and the ground trembled with barely contained geological fury. He enters the Fire Temple, reunites with Darunia, and frees the captured Gorons in the temple one by one. Inside the Fire Temple, Link discovered a sight that filled him with rage and determination. The proud Goron people had been enslaved by Ganondorf's forces, forced to work in the temple's most dangerous areas, while monsters stood guard over them. Darunia, now grown into his full power as leader of the Gorons, had ventured into the temple to rescue his people, but found himself trapped by the very creatures he sought to defeat. The reunion between Link and Darunia was marked by both joy and urgency, as the Goron leader explained the dire situation his people faced. The Fire Temple's design reflected its volcanic setting, with chambers carved from solid rock and passageways that wound through natural lava tubes. Pools of molten rock served as both obstacles and heating sources for the temple's many mechanisms. The architecture incorporated the mountain's natural features, creating a structure that was as much geological formation as it was religious site. After facing down numerous burning creatures, including the unique Flare Dancer mini-boss, he eventually finds the Megaton Hammer and wields it against the dragon Volvagia. The Flare Dancer proved to be unlike any enemy Link had faced before. This creature of living flame could only be damaged when its fiery aura was extinguished with water, forcing Link to use the environment creatively to create opportunities for attack. The Megaton Hammer, once wielded by the legendary Goron heroes of old, became Link's key to both survival and progress within the temple. This massive weapon could crush blocks, trigger heavy switches, and most importantly, deliver devastating blows to enemies vulnerable to impact damage. The hammer's weight made it slow to swing, but its power was unmatched. Volvagia, the ancient dragon that had once terrorized the Goron people in legends of old, had been resurrected by Ganondorf's evil magic. The beast's serpentine body emerged from lava pools throughout the battle arena, breathing gouts of flame that could incinerate anything they touched. Its armored scales deflected most attacks, leaving only its head vulnerable when it emerged to strike. The battle against Volvagia tested every aspect of Link's growth as a warrior. The dragon's incredible speed and reach meant that positioning was crucial, while its fire breath attacks required split-second timing to avoid. The Megaton Hammer proved effective against the creature's head, but only when Link could predict where and when Volvagia would surface. Throughout the fight, the dragon's roars shook the entire mountain, causing rocks to fall from the ceiling and lava to splash from the surrounding pools. Link had to remain constantly aware of both his primary opponent and the environmental hazards that threatened to overwhelm him at any moment. When Volvagia finally fell, the victory came at a great cost. Darunia, in his role as the Sage of Fire, explained that he must remain in the sacred realm to fulfill his duties. The strong bond between Link and the Goron leader made this parting particularly difficult, as Darunia had come to see the young hero as both brother and worthy successor. This awakens Darunia as a sage and grants Link the Fire Medallion alongside a heart container. Darunia's transformation into a sage was marked by a profound sense of duty and sacrifice. Though he would have preferred to continue leading his people directly, he understood that his role as a sage was necessary to protect not just the Gorons, but all of Hyrule, the Water Temple and Princess Ruto's destiny. Link must use his new iron boots to sink to the bottom of Lake Hylia and dislodge the lock with his hookshot, to find the water temple. The journey to the water temple began with one of Link's most surreal experiences yet. Lake Hylia, once a crystal-clear body of water teeming with life, had been partially drained and corrupted during Ganondorf's reign. The iron boots, forged by Goron's smiths, allowed Link to walk along the lake bottom as if it were dry land. This strange method of travel opened up entirely new perspectives on familiar locations, revealing underwater passages and structures that had been hidden beneath the surface for generations. In the temple, Link meets up with Princess Ruto again, who leads Link further into the dungeon, where he must raise and lower the water level constantly to find a complex collection of small keys to advance. Princess Ruto had grown into a beautiful and capable leader during the 7 years of Link's slumber, but she still retained the determined spirit that had made her such a formidable companion in their youth. The water temple stood as perhaps the most complex and challenging structure Link had yet encountered. Its design centered around an intricate system of water management, with multiple levels that could be flooded or drained through the manipulation of various mechanisms throughout the building. The temple's puzzles required Link to think in 3 dimensions and across time, as changing the water level in one area would affect accessibility in others. A passage that could only be reached when the water was high might lead to a switch that needed to be activated when the water was low. This constant need to backtrack and reevaluate routes made navigation a mental challenge as much as a physical one. He is eventually confronted by Dark Link, and upon conquering himself, he finds the Longshot. The encounter with Dark Link represented one of the most psychologically challenging moments in Link's journey. This shadow version of himself possessed all of his skills and abilities, but none of his restraint or moral compass. The battle took place in a room that seemed to exist outside normal space and time, with a floor made of still water that reflected everything perfectly. Dark Link emerged from this reflection, moving with inhuman grace and attacking with techniques that mirrored Link's own perfectly. Every sword stroke was matched, every defensive maneuver countered by an identical move. Victory required Link to abandon his usual fighting patterns and think creatively. The Shadow could only copy what Link did, not anticipate what he might do differently. By varying his attack patterns and using unexpected combinations of items and techniques, Link eventually found openings in his Dark Double's defenses. The Longshot, an enhanced version of the Hookshot, extended Link's reach dramatically and opened up new possibilities for both traversal and combat. This tool would prove essential not just for completing the Water Temple, but for accessing areas throughout Hyrule that had previously been beyond reach. With the Longshot, Iron Boots, and Zora Tunic combined, he is able to traverse the dungeon and defeat its master, Morpha. Morpha represented a unique challenge among the temple bosses, as it was less a single creature than a mass of animated water held together by a small nucleus. The battle took place in a chamber where Link stood on a small platform surrounded by water, while Morpha's pseudopods reached out to grab and crush him. The key to victory lay in using the Longshot to grab Morpha's nucleus when it became exposed, then attacking it directly before it could retreat back into the safety of the water mass. This required precise timing and positioning, as the nucleus only appeared for brief moments and was constantly moving. Breaking Morpha's influence lets Ruto awaken as a sage and earns Link the Water Medallion as well as yet another heart container. Princess Ruto's awakening as the Sage of Water carried additional emotional weight due to her childhood engagement to Link. She understood that their paths could never truly converge as she had once hoped, but she took pride in seeing the boy she had known grow into a true hero, the Shadow Temple and Impa's truth. When Link returns to Kakariko village with 4 medallions, he finds the village in flames. Sheik will warn Link to stay back before a shadowy figure emerges from the well and knocks them both unconscious. The attack on Kakariko village marked a turning point in Ganondorf's strategy. No longer content to wait passively for Link to awaken the sages, the evil king had begun actively targeting the locations where the remaining sages might be found. The shadowy figure that emerged from the well was Bongo Bongo, a massive spirit that had been sealed beneath the village for generations. Ganondorf's corruption had weakened the ancient bindings, allowing this creature of nightmare to break free and terrorize the village. Its massive eye and ghostly hands made it a truly terrifying sight. After completing the water temple, there will be a cutscene of Kakariko village in flames, and Sheik will emerge from the well ready to help Link reach the Shadow Temple. However, before tackling the Shadow Temple, Link will need to learn the Song of Storms and go back in time to enter the bottom of the well. The bottom of the well served as a preview of the horrors that awaited in the Shadow Temple. This subterranean maze was filled with the restless dead and illusions designed to confuse and disorient intruders. The very air seemed thick with malevolent energy, and strange whispers echoed from unseen sources. Link must obtain the Lens of Truth as a child to complete the Shadow Temple as an adult. The Lens of Truth became one of Link's most important tools, allowing him to see through illusions and detect hidden passages that would otherwise remain invisible. This magical eyepiece revealed the true nature of things, cutting through deception to show reality beneath. The bottom of the well has a handful of fake walls and holes in the floor that make it somewhat difficult to navigate. However, players can obtain the Lens of Truth early on in the mini-dungeon, so a lot of the bottom of the well is optional. The experience of navigating the well served as training for the greater challenges of the Shadow Temple, teaching Link to question everything he saw and trust only what the Lens of Truth revealed. Besides the hidden holes and fake walls, the enemies can be a bit of a challenge because the bottom of the well is full of re-dead, and the boss battle with Dead Hand is harder than some of the other bosses in Zelda. The re-deads, animated corpses that could paralyze victims with their haunting screams, represented some of the most disturbing enemies Link had yet encountered. Their very presence spoke to the dark history hidden beneath Kakariko village. Dead Hand, a massive pale creature with multiple appendages emerging from the ground, served as the guardian of the Lens of Truth. This battle required Link to strike at the creature's hands while avoiding its attempts to grab and crush him, all while navigating the confined space of the underground chamber. The Shadow Temple itself existed as a monument to Hyrule's darkest secrets and most shameful history. Here, in chambers decorated with instruments of torture and execution, the kingdom's past atrocities were preserved for all eternity. The temple served as both prison and museum, holding the restless spirits of those who had died in violence and betrayal. Link's progression through the Shadow Temple revealed the true cost of peace and order in Hyrule. The walls told stories of executions, betrayals, and cover-ups that had been hidden from public knowledge for generations. This knowledge was deeply disturbing, but necessary for understanding the full complexity of the world he sought to protect. Impa, revealed as the Sage of Shadow, had served as Zelda's protector and keeper of the royal family's secrets. Her role as guardian of the Shadow Temple made her privy to knowledge that few others possessed. The wisdom she had gained through years of protecting these dark truths prepared her for the sacrifices that being a sage would require. The Spirit Temple and Naburu's redemption. The final temple on Link's journey took him to the harsh Gerudo Desert, home of Ganondorf's own people. The Spirit Temple, an ancient structure that predated even the Gerudo's arrival in the desert, held secrets that connected directly to the evil king's rise to power. The temple's unique feature required Link to complete it twice, once as a child and once as an adult. This temporal puzzle reflected the complex nature of time itself, showing how actions in the past could influence events in the future in ways that weren't immediately apparent. As a child, Link had encountered Nabooru, a Gerudo warrior who opposed Ganondorf's methods despite being a member of his tribe. She had recognized that the king's quest for power would ultimately bring ruin to her people, and she sought to prevent this by claiming the temple's treasures before he could. Naburu's capture by Kume and Kotake, Ganondorf's surrogate mothers, had been a devastating blow to the Gerudo resistance. These twin witches, masters of fire and ice magic respectively, had brainwashed the noble warrior and turned her into a tool of their master's will. The iron knuckle that Link faced in the Spirit Temple was actually Nabooru herself, transformed by dark magic. The liberation of Nabooru from the twins' control represented more than just the awakening of another sage. It symbolized the possibility of redemption for Ganondorf's people, showing that they were not inherently evil, but had been led astray by their king's corruption. The silver gauntlets found within the Spirit Temple granted Link the strength to move the massive blocks that barred his way to the temple's deepest chambers. This increase in physical power reflected his growth not just as a warrior, but as a person capable of bearing the enormous responsibilities that came with being the hero of time. The final confrontation. After the 5 sages awaken, Sheik reveals himself to be Zelda in disguise and the 7th sage. This revelation recontextualized every interaction Link had shared with his mysterious guide. Zelda had spent the 7 years of his slumber learning the arts of the Sheikah, training herself to become a warrior capable of fighting alongside the hero of time. Zelda explains that Ganondorf's heart was unbalanced, causing the Triforce to split into 3 pieces. She reveals that she possesses the Triforce of wisdom, while Ganondorf holds the Triforce of power, and Link bears the Triforce of courage. This divine division had occurred the moment Ganondorf touched the complete relic, as the goddess's creation protected itself from corruption. After Zelda explains her story to Link and gives him the light arrows, Ganondorf interrupts and imprisons Zelda in a crystal cage. The light arrows represented the ultimate weapon against darkness, their divine power capable of piercing even Ganondorf's strongest defenses. These sacred projectiles would prove essential in the final battle against the King of Evil. Ganondorf's sudden appearance in the Temple of Time demonstrated that his power had grown beyond anything Link had previously encountered. The Evil King's ability to imprison Zelda despite her sage powers showed that the final confrontation would test every skill Link had developed on his journey. He then challenges Link to meet him in his castle. Ganondorf's challenge was delivered with the arrogance of one who believed victory was assured. He had spent 7 years consolidating his power and preparing for this moment, confident that no single warrior could stand against the might he had accumulated. Link battles Ganondorf and ultimately defeats him, allowing Zelda and the other 6 sages to seal him away. The battle in Ganondorf's throne room showcased the full extent of both combatants' abilities. The evil king wielded dark magic with devastating effect, teleporting around the chamber while hurling balls of energy that Link had to deflect back at their source. The fight required Link to use every skill he had learned throughout his journey. Precise timing, careful positioning, and strategic use of his various items all played crucial roles in achieving victory. The light arrows proved capable of stunning Ganondorf, creating openings for Link to close distance and strike with the Master Sword, Ganon's true form. The other 6 sages help Link enter the stronghold, where he frees Zelda after defeating Ganondorf, who destroys the castle in an attempt to kill Link and Zelda. Ganondorf's apparent defeat was only the beginning of the true final battle. As the castle began to collapse around them, Link and Zelda raced through crumbling corridors and falling debris in a desperate attempt to escape. After they escape the collapsing castle, Ganondorf emerges from the rubble and transforms into a boar-like beast named Ganon, using the Triforce of Power. The transformation revealed Ganondorf's true nature, not merely a man corrupted by power, but a force of pure malevolence given physical form. Ganon's massive size and bestial appearance reflected the depths of corruption that had consumed the former Gerudo king. He knocks the Master Sword from Link's hand, but with Zelda's aid, Link retrieves the Master Sword and defeats Ganon. The battle against Ganon pushed Link to his absolute limits. Without the Master Sword, he was forced to rely on the light arrows and his other equipment to survive against an opponent whose strength dwarfed anything he had previously faced. Zelda's role in the final battle extended beyond simply providing support. Her magic helped keep the ring of fire that surrounded the arena from closing in, while her knowledge of Ganon's weaknesses guided Link's strategy. Their partnership in this moment represented the culmination of their shared journey from childhood dreams to adult responsibilities. The Seven Sages seal Ganondorf in the Sacred Realm, but he vows revenge on their descendants using the Triforce of Power. Even in defeat, Ganondorf's malevolence remained undiminished. His final words carried the weight of prophecy, promising that his hatred would transcend death itself to threaten future generations. The price of victory and the timeline split. Zelda uses the Ocarina of Time to send Link back to his childhood. The victory over Ganon came with a price that few could have anticipated. Zelda, recognizing the magnitude of what Link had sacrificed to save Hyrule, made the difficult decision to undo the adult timeline that had been created by his 7-year slumber. The ending of Ocarina of Time has long been considered the cornerstone of the Zelda timeline, as the presence of the hero of time who went back and forth in 7 years of time generated a fork in history, dividing Hyrule's chronology. This temporal manipulation created 3 separate timelines, each representing a different possible outcome of Link's adventure. Navi departs, and young Link meets Zelda in the castle garden once more, where he retains knowledge of Hyrule's fate, preventing its decline. Link's return to his childhood came with the burden of memories that no child should have to bear. He alone remembered the adult timeline, the friendships forged and lost, and the price that victory had demanded. The knowledge Link possessed allowed him to warn Zelda about Ganondorf's true nature before the Gerudo King could begin his quest for the Triforce. This prevented the events of the adult timeline from ever occurring, creating a new branch of history where Hyrule's golden age continued uninterrupted. Yet this apparent happy ending carried its own tragic implications. The friends Link had made as an adult, the sages who had sacrificed their normal lives to protect Hyrule, would never experience those same relationships. Saria would remain in the forest. Darunia would continue leading his people, and Ruto would grow up as a princess rather than a sage. The hero's melancholy. The fascinating book Hyrule Historia states that there can only be one Triforce. This means that although Link keeps the mark on the back of his hand when he comes back into the past, the Triforce of Courage itself does not follow. The metaphysical implications of time travel meant that while Link retained his memories and some physical marks of his adult adventure, the divine power he had wielded was left behind in the timeline he had departed. Now that we have had a vision of the future, let's get back to Link. In between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, the poor kid gets very depressed. That is because he has memories of saving the world, which he is the only one to remember. Link's unique position as the only person aware of both timelines created a profound sense of isolation that would haunt him for years to come. There's also the fact that most of the friendships he has known during his adult life will never actually happen, or haven't happened yet. The relationships that had defined his adult existence, his bonds with the awakened sages, his partnership with Sheik, and his role as the recognized hero of time, were now nothing more than memories that no one else shared. One other thing which really upsets Link is the loss of his longtime fairy companion, Navi. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Navi can be seen flying up and leaving the Temple of Time by herself, without so much as a goodbye to her friend. This abandonment by his most constant companion added another layer to Link's emotional burden. With nothing else to do and feeling lonely, Link sets out to find her over the course of several months. Unfortunately, Navi is a small fairy, which must be hard to spot in such a vast world, and she can fly, which means that she could be almost anywhere. His search will eventually lead him back to the Lost Woods, which is exactly when Majora's Mask opens. The Eternal Legacy. While Link's life is kind of a bummer between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, most of his former friends are having a good time. In particular, all of those people who would normally go on to be awakened as sages get to live a normal life. The prevention of the adult timeline's tragic events meant that Link's friends could experience the peaceful lives they had been denied in the other reality. Saria continued to play her ocarina in the forest, unaware that she might have been destined for greater and more burdensome responsibilities. Darunia led his people with strength and wisdom, never knowing that he might have been called upon to sacrifice his personal happiness for the greater good. Ruto grew into her role as Princess of the Zoras, her life untroubled by the weight of sagehood. Yet this apparent happiness was built upon Link's sacrifice. He alone carried the knowledge of what might have been, the memory of a world saved at terrible cost. His melancholy served as the price for everyone else's peace, a burden that would eventually drive him to seek solace in the very forest where his adventure had begun. The story of Ocarina of Time thus becomes not just a tale of heroism triumphant, but a meditation on the nature of sacrifice and the weight of responsibility. Link's victory saved Hyrule, but it also condemned him to a life haunted by memories of a future that would never come to pass. Eventually, he becomes a spirit roaming the land hundreds of years later during the events of Twilight Princess. It's a major jump from being depressed to becoming a bitter ghost stuck in limbo, but that's unfortunately what's in store for the hero of time. The hero's shade, as Link's spirit would come to be known, represented the ultimate fate of those who bear burdens too great for any one person to carry. The three timelines. The events of Ocarina of Time created three distinct branching timelines, each representing a different outcome of Link's adventure. This timeline split would have profound implications for all future games in the series, creating multiple versions of Hyrule's history that would unfold in parallel. The child timeline follows Link after being sent back to his original time, leading to the events of Majora's Mask and eventually Twilight Princess. In this timeline, Ganondorf's plan was thwarted before it could begin, leading to his capture and eventual execution. However, the Triforce of Power's influence would allow him to survive even death, setting the stage for his return in a different form. The adult timeline continues from the world Link left behind when he returned to the past. Without the Hero of Time to protect it, this Hyrule would eventually face Ganondorf's return. When no hero appeared to stop him, the gods themselves intervened, flooding the entire kingdom beneath the waves of the Great Sea. This timeline leads to the Wind Waker and its sequels. The Downfall timeline represents a darker possibility, one where Link, despite his best efforts, was defeated by Ganon in the final battle. This timeline encompasses many of the earlier games in the series, including A Link to the Past, where the consequences of the Hero of Time's failure continue to ripple through history. the music of time. Throughout his adventure, music played a crucial role in Link's success. The songs he learned were more than mere melodies. They were keys to understanding the deeper mysteries of Hyrule and bridges connecting different times and places. Each song carried with it the power to transform reality itself, whether by opening doors, summoning allies, or manipulating the flow of time. Zelda's lullaby served as Link's introduction to the power of music, marking him as an ally of the royal family and opening doors that would otherwise remain closed. The song's gentle melody carried within it the weight of tradition and the promise of protection for those who served the crown. Saria's song connected Link to his childhood friend even when they were separated by great distances. This simple forest melody became a lifeline to the past, reminding Link of simpler times when his greatest concerns were the games played in Kokiri Forest rather than the fate of the entire kingdom. The Song of Time itself represented perhaps the most powerful musical magic Link would ever wield. This ancient melody, taught to him by Zelda in her final message, carried the ability to open gateways through both space and time. Its notes resonated with the very foundations of reality, making possible the miracles that defined Link's quest. Other songs, the Epona's song that called his faithful horse, the Song of Storms that commanded the weather itself, and the various teleportation melodies taught by Sheik, each demonstrated different aspects of music's power in Hyrule. Together, they formed a symphony of magic that elevated Link's adventure from mere physical combat to a deeper harmony with the world itself. The Master Sword's true purpose. The Master Sword revealed itself to be far more than simply a weapon, though its role as the blade of evil's bane was certainly crucial to Link's success. The sword served as a key to multiple realities, its placement in or removal from the pedestal of time, determining which era Link would inhabit. The sword's relationship with its wielder went beyond the mechanical. It recognized worthiness, not just in terms of physical strength or combat skill, but in the deeper qualities of character that defined a true hero. The 7-year seal it placed on Link was not a punishment, but a preparation, ensuring that he would be ready for the responsibilities that awaited him. When Link finally mastered the sword's power, it became an extension of his will rather than merely a tool. The blade's ability to repel evil complemented Link's own pure intentions, creating a harmony between weapon and wielder that multiplied the effectiveness of both. In the final battles against Ganondorf and Ganon, this unity proved essential to victory. The Master Sword's temporal abilities also highlighted the complex relationship between past, present, and future that defined Link's adventure. By serving as both anchor and gateway between different time periods, the sword embodied the paradoxes inherent in time travel, while providing the stability necessary to navigate them safely. The Triforce's divine wisdom. The splitting of the Triforce, when touched by Ganondorf, revealed the deep wisdom built into the goddess's creation. Rather than simply granting power to anyone who might claim it, the sacred relic protected itself by ensuring that only those with balanced hearts could wield its complete might. Each piece of the Triforce carried not just power, but responsibility. Link's Triforce of courage didn't simply make him brave, it connected him to the courage of all who had come before and would come after. This divine heritage gave him strength in moments of doubt and guidance, when the path forward seemed unclear. Zelda's Triforce of Wisdom provided her with knowledge that went beyond mere information. Her understanding of Ganondorf's true nature, her ability to see through the complexities of time travel, and her insights into the requirements for awakening the sages, all stemmed from this divine connection. The wisdom she gained allowed her to orchestrate events from behind the scenes, guiding Link's journey even when she couldn't directly participate. Ganondorf's Triforce of Power, while granting him incredible strength, also served as a form of divine justice. The power he craved became both his greatest asset and his ultimate weakness. The more he relied on the Triforce's might, the more he became enslaved to it, losing touch with the strategic cunning that had originally made him dangerous. The goddess's wisdom in creating a relic that would divide when touched by unworthy hands proved to be one of the most important safeguards in Hyrule's history. Without this protection, Ganondorf's complete victory would have been assured, and no hero would have possessed the divine strength necessary to oppose him. The sage's eternal burden. The role of the sages in Ocarina of Time represents one of the most profound sacrifices depicted in any heroic tale. Each individual who awakened to their true nature was forced to abandon their previous life and accept responsibilities that would bind them for eternity. While the game doesn't explicitly detail their emotions during this transformation, the weight of their sacrifice becomes clear through their dialogue and the circumstances of their awakening. Saria's awakening as the Sage of Forest meant leaving behind her eternal childhood and the simple joys of Kokiri life. No longer could she play her ocarina in carefree moments or dance in the forest clearings with her friends. Her new role required constant vigilance against the forces that would corrupt the natural world. Darunia's transformation into the Sage of Fire forced him to step back from direct leadership of his people. While his wisdom and guidance would always be available to them, he could no longer share in their daily struggles and triumphs. The brotherhood he had built with his fellow Gorons became a more distant relationship, filtered through his sacred duties. Princess Ruto's role as the Sage of Water created perhaps the most complex situation of all. Her position as both a princess and a sage created dual loyalties that sometimes conflicted. Her people needed their princess, but the world needed their sage, and balancing these responsibilities required constant sacrifice. Impa's awakening as the Sage of Shadow was in many ways the most natural, as her role as protector of Zelda had already prepared her for a life of service and sacrifice. However, even she had to accept a more distant relationship with the princess she had raised, knowing that her duties as a sage might sometimes conflict with her protective instincts. Naburu's transformation represented redemption as much as awakening. Her role as the Sage of Spirit allowed her to work toward undoing the damage that Ganondorf had caused to her people and their reputation. Yet this redemption came at the cost of never again being able to live as a simple member of Gerudo society. The architecture of adventure. The dungeons and temples Link explored throughout his journey were more than mere obstacles or puzzle chambers. They could be interpreted as architectural reflections of the spiritual and emotional themes that defined his quest. Each structure tells a story through its design, and we can infer deeper meanings about the nature of heroism and the cost of power from their layout and symbolism. The great Deku Tree's interior served as Link's introduction to the idea that external beauty might hide internal corruption. The ancient guardian's noble exterior concealed the parasitic infection that was slowly killing him, teaching Link that appearances could be deceiving and that true understanding required looking beneath the surface. This lesson would prove essential as Link encountered increasingly complex moral situations throughout his journey. Dodongo's Cavern introduced Link to the concept of environmental restoration. The dungeon's completion didn't just clear out monsters, it restored the natural balance that allowed the Gorons to thrive. This lesson in stewardship would prove crucial in Link's later understanding of his role as protector of Hyrule. Jabu Jabu's belly presented a unique challenge in that Link was simultaneously healing and exploring. The fish's illness affected every aspect of the dungeon's design, from the aggressive parasites to the malfunctioning electrical systems. Success required not conquest, but cure, teaching Link that sometimes the greatest victories came through restoration rather than destruction. The forest temple's twisted architecture reflected the corruption that had infected the natural world during Ganondorf's reign. Its constantly shifting rooms and illusory passages served as a metaphor for the confusion and disorientation that evil brings to even the most familiar places. The Fire Temple's brutal design showcased the industrial exploitation that Ganondorf brought to Hyrule. The Goron's enslavement in their own sacred space represented the perversion of religious sites for material gain, while the temple's dangerous conditions reflected the cost of unchecked ambition. The Water Temple's complex water management system served as perhaps the most sophisticated puzzle in Link's journey, requiring him to think in multiple dimensions and across time. The temple's design reflected the interconnected nature of all life, showing how changes in one area could have far-reaching consequences throughout the entire system. The Shadow Temple's horrific chambers revealed the dark foundation upon which Hyrule's peace had been built. The instruments of torture and execution found within spoke to the violent methods that had sometimes been necessary to maintain order, forcing Link to confront the moral complexity of the world he sought to protect. The Spirit Temple's dual time requirement created a unique architectural experience that spanned decades. The structure served as a bridge between past and future, showing how actions in one era could influence events in another. The temple's design emphasized the continuity of struggle across generations. The psychology of power. Ganondorf's character arc throughout Ocarina of Time provides a fascinating study in the corruption that absolute power can bring. His journey from ambitious tribal leader to demonic tyrant illustrates the ways in which the pursuit of power can gradually erode one's humanity until nothing remains but the hunger for more control. In his early appearances, Ganondorf retains enough of his original personality to function as a political figure. His negotiations with the King of Hyrule, while deceptive, still require him to maintain a facade of civilized behavior. This suggests that at some level, he still understands and can mimic normal human interactions, though whether this represents genuine diplomatic skill or mere manipulation remains open to interpretation. The 7 years of his reign reveal the progressive deterioration of these qualities. By the time Link confronts him as an adult, Ganondorf has become something fundamentally different from what he once was. His complete dismissal of diplomacy, his reliance on brute force, and his apparent inability to conceive of any solution except domination all speak to a mind that has been warped by unchecked power. The transformation into Ganon represents the final stage of this corruption. The beast form is not just a magical transformation, but could be seen as a physical manifestation of what Ganondorf has become internally. The intelligence and cunning that once made him formidable have been largely replaced by raw aggression and malevolence, suggesting that his pursuit of power has ultimately consumed the very qualities that made him dangerous in the first place. This progression serves as a warning about the seductive nature of power and the importance of maintaining connections to one's fundamental humanity. Ganondorf's isolation from meaningful relationships and his rejection of any moral constraints created a feedback loop that ultimately consumed everything that had once made him a complex individual. The nature of time travel. The time travel mechanics in Ocarina of Time operate on multiple levels, creating both narrative opportunities and philosophical challenges. The 7-year jump serves obvious gameplay purposes, allowing Link to access new areas and abilities while providing a dramatic transformation of the familiar world. However, the deeper implications of time travel reveal more complex themes about responsibility, sacrifice, and the weight of knowledge. Link's ability to move between time periods grants him a unique perspective on cause and effect, showing him how small actions can have enormous consequences across decades. The relationship between the child and adult timelines creates a paradox that reflects the broader themes of the story. Link's adult adventures technically never happened once he returns to the past, yet their effects continue to influence his character and decisions. This suggests that experience and growth transcend the mechanical details of temporal causality. The splitting of the timeline at the story's conclusion represents the ultimate expression of these themes. Rather than providing a simple resolution, the game acknowledges that every choice creates new possibilities and forecloses others. Link's victory is complete, but it comes at the cost of creating multiple versions of reality, each with its own challenges and opportunities. The Master Sword's role as both the catalyst and the controller of time travel emphasizes the connection between power and responsibility. The sword will only allow someone worthy to manipulate time, and even then, the changes that can be made are limited by cosmic forces beyond any individual's control. The cultural foundations of Hyrule. The diverse races and cultures that populate Hyrule each contribute unique elements to the kingdom's overall character, creating a rich tapestry of traditions and beliefs that Link must understand and navigate throughout his quest. Each group faces distinct challenges and offers different perspectives on the problems that threaten the realm. The Kokiri represent innocence and natural harmony, living in perfect balance with their forest environment. Their eternal childhood serves as both a blessing and a limitation, granting them freedom from the burdens of aging while also preventing them from fully understanding the complexities of the adult world. The Gorons embody strength and fellowship, their society built around principles of mutual support and collective effort. Their physical power is matched by their emotional warmth, creating a culture where individual achievements are always celebrated as community victories. The Zoras demonstrate the importance of grace and fluid adaptation. Their aquatic nature requires them to think differently about space and movement, while their long lifespans give them perspectives on change and continuity that shorter-lived races often lack. The Gerudo present the most complex cultural situation, as their association with Ganondorf creates suspicion and mistrust, even though most of them oppose his methods. Their desert environment has shaped them into fierce warriors, but their isolation has also made them vulnerable to the influence of charismatic but destructive leaders. The Hylians, as the dominant culture, serve as both the baseline for comparison and the primary target of Ganondorf's corruption. Their technological achievements and political structures provide stability, but also create the hierarchies and power differentials that ambitious individuals can exploit. Each culture's response to the crisis reveals different strengths and vulnerabilities. The Kokiri's isolation protects them initially, but leaves them helpless when corruption reaches their forest. The Gorons' unity makes them formidable opponents, but also makes them easy targets for mass enslavement. The Zora's adaptability helps them survive, but cannot prevent their princess from being drawn into the conflict. The symbolism of masks and identity. While masks play a more prominent role in Majora's Mask, their symbolic importance begins in Ocarina of Time through the various transformations and identity shifts that characterize the story. We can trace the theme of hidden or changed identity throughout Link's adventure, from his own mysterious origins to the various characters who are not what they initially appear to be. Link's transformation from child to adult represents the most obvious form of identity change, but it goes deeper than mere physical growth. The 7-year gap creates a fundamental disconnect between who Link was and who he has become, forcing him to reconcile his childhood memories with his adult responsibilities. Zelda's disguise as Sheik provides the most dramatic example of hidden identity in the game. Her adoption of Sheikah clothing and mannerisms represents not just a costume change, but a fundamental alteration of her approach to leadership. As Sheikh, she becomes active and direct, rather than diplomatic and indirect. The various enemies that transform or hide their true nature, from the shape-shifting likes to the deceptive iron knuckles, reinforce the theme that appearances cannot be trusted. Link must learn to see through illusions and identify threats that might initially appear harmless or even helpful. The sage's awakening process itself represents a form of unmasking, as each individual discovers their true nature and purpose. The person they thought they were proves to be only a partial truth, with their full identity revealed only when they accept their cosmic responsibilities. Even Ganondorf participates in this theme, initially appearing as a legitimate political leader before revealing his true nature as a power-hungry tyrant. His final transformation into Ganon strips away even the pretense of humanity, showing him as the beast he has always been internally. The economics of adventure. The item collection and upgrade systems in Ocarina of Time create an economic framework that reflects broader themes about growth, preparation, and the accumulation of wisdom. Link's progression from basic equipment to legendary artifacts mirrors his personal development from confused child to confident hero. The rupee system establishes a baseline economy that connects Link to the broader Hyrulean society. His need to earn money for equipment upgrades requires him to interact with merchants, complete side quests, and explore thoroughly. This economic engagement helps ground the fantasy adventure in relatable concerns about resources and priorities. The heart container system creates a different kind of economy, one based on courage and achievement rather than monetary exchange. Each additional heart represents a trial overcome and a lesson learned, building Link's capacity to survive increasingly dangerous challenges. The collection of various bottles, tools, and magical items creates resource management challenges that require Link to think strategically about what he carries and when he uses it. The limited inventory space forces difficult decisions about priorities and preparation. The upgrade system for items like the Deku Shield to Hylian Shield, or the Fairy Ocarina to Ocarina of Time, shows progression through replacement rather than mere accumulation. This reflects the theme that growth often requires leaving behind the familiar in favor of the superior. The Golden Skulltula tokens create a parallel economy based on helping others rather than personal gain. The cursed family's plight can only be resolved through Link's selfless collection of these tokens, showing that true heroism sometimes requires working for rewards that benefit others rather than oneself. The geography of conflict. Hyrule's physical layout serves narrative purposes beyond simply providing varied environments for gameplay. The kingdom's geography reflects the spiritual and political themes that drive the story, with each region representing different aspects of the cosmic struggle between order and chaos. Central Hyrule, dominated by Hyrule Field and the castle, represents the seat of established power and traditional authority. The open plains provide a sense of possibility and freedom, while the castle's imposing presence reminds all who see it of the kingdom's strength and stability. This geographical arrangement could imply a deliberate design choice that reinforces the political hierarchy of Hylian society. The surrounding regions each face different types of challenges that reflect their symbolic roles in the larger narrative. Death Mountain's volcanic activity represents the power of natural forces that dwarf human concerns, while also providing the raw materials and harsh conditions that shape the Goron culture. Lake Hylia's pristine waters and the Zora's domain represent purity and clarity, making the corruption that affects them during Ganondorf's reign particularly symbolic. The contrast between the lake's usual beauty and its drained, polluted state during the adult timeline emphasizes the scope of the evil king's influence. The Lost Woods and Kokiri Forest serve as a realm apart from normal time and space, where different rules apply and ancient magic still holds sway. This separation makes them a refuge during times of trouble, but also makes them vulnerable when corruption finally reaches them. The Gerudo Desert's harsh conditions reflect the isolation and suspicion that surrounds its inhabitants. The difficulty of reaching and surviving in this environment mirrors the political challenges of integrating the Gerudo into broader Hyrulean society. Kakariko Village's position between the civilized plains and the dangerous mountain creates a unique role as a frontier settlement. Its inhabitants must be tough enough to survive in a challenging environment while maintaining connections to the kingdom's cultural center. The music of memory. The role of music in Ocarina of Time extends beyond its mechanical functions to serve as a repository of memory and emotion that connects characters across time and space. Each melody carries within it the essence of the person who taught it and the circumstances under which it was learned. Zelda's lullaby serves as more than just a key to locked doors. It represents the princess's trust in Link and her willingness to share the royal family's most sacred melodies with a stranger from the forest. The song becomes a symbol of their partnership and shared commitment to protecting Hyrule. Saria's song maintains the connection between Link and his childhood friend, even when they are separated by vast distances and different destinies. The simple forest melody serves as a reminder of simpler times and unconditional friendship, providing emotional anchor points during Link's most challenging moments. Epona's song demonstrates the power of music to transcend species barriers and create bonds based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Link's relationship with his horse is built on partnership rather than ownership, and the song serves as the foundation of their communication. The Song of Storms creates one of the game's most memorable time paradoxes, as Link learns the melody as an adult and then teaches it to the past, creating a loop with no clear beginning. This musical impossibility reflects the deeper mysteries of time travel and causality that permeate the story. The various teleportation songs taught by Sheik serve practical purposes, but also represent the sharing of ancient Sheikah knowledge with someone deemed worthy of such trust. Each melody connects Link to locations of spiritual significance, emphasizing the sacred geography of Hyrule. The Sun's Song and Song of Time itself grant Link limited control over the fundamental forces of the universe, showing that music in Hyrule is not mere entertainment, but a form of magic that can reshape reality itself. The ecology of evil. Ganondorf's influence on Hyrule extends beyond political control to environmental corruption that affects every level of the natural world. The 7 years of his reign demonstrate how evil can become an ecological force that disrupts the fundamental balance of life itself. The withering of Hyrule Field's grass and the appearance of dangerous creatures where peaceful animals once grazed shows how corruption spreads through natural systems. The very soil seems poisoned by Ganondorf's presence, unable to support the abundant life that once characterized the kingdom. The freezing of Zora's domain represents a more targeted form of environmental warfare, as Ganondorf uses supernatural cold to neutralize a potential threat while demonstrating his power to other populations. The ice serves as both weapon and warning, showing what happens to those who might oppose him. The corruption of the temples reflects the way evil can pervert sacred spaces, turning places of worship and wisdom into strongholds of darkness. Each corrupted temple requires not just military conquest, but spiritual purification to restore its proper function. The appearance of new monsters throughout Hyrule shows how Ganondorf's influence creates opportunities for malevolent creatures to flourish. The Redeads in Castletown represent the ultimate expression of this corruption, former citizens transformed into undead horrors that mock their previous lives. The pollution of water sources and the disruption of weather patterns demonstrate the systematic nature of Ganondorf's environmental assault. These changes affect every living thing in the kingdom, creating cascading effects that reach far beyond the immediate targets of his political control. The philosophy of heroism. Link's character development throughout Ocarina of Time raises fundamental questions about the nature of heroism and the responsibilities that come with exceptional abilities. His journey from reluctant participant to willing savior explores the psychological and moral dimensions of what it means to be a hero. The initial reluctance Link shows when first told of his destiny reflects what could be seen as a realistic response to overwhelming responsibility. His gradual acceptance of his role demonstrates that true heroism might not be about eagerly seeking glory, but about accepting necessary burdens even when they are unwanted. This interpretation suggests a more mature understanding of heroism than the traditional eager volunteer narrative. The isolation that comes with Link's unique knowledge and abilities highlights one of the most challenging aspects of heroism: the difficulty of maintaining normal relationships when one's experiences and responsibilities set them apart from ordinary society. Link's consistent choice to help others, even when doing so provides no direct benefit to his main quest, establishes the moral foundation of his heroism. His willingness to rescue imprisoned Gorons, solve villagers' problems, and complete seemingly minor tasks shows that heroism is as much about character as about grand gestures. The sacrifices Link makes throughout his journey, his childhood, his normal relationships, and ultimately his place in the timeline he saves, demonstrate that true heroism often requires giving up what one values most for the sake of others. The burden of knowledge that Link carries, particularly regarding the timeline split and its implications, shows how heroism can become a form of suffering. His awareness of possibilities and consequences that others cannot see creates a form of isolation that is both blessing and curse. The restoration of balance, the ultimate resolution of Ocarina of Time, focuses not on the defeat of evil, but on the restoration of balance to a world that has been fundamentally disrupted. Link's success is measured not just by his victories in combat, but by his ability to heal the wounds that Ganondorf's reign has inflicted on Hyrule. The awakening of the sages serves as the primary mechanism for this restoration, as each temple's purification removes a source of corruption from the natural world. The combined power of all 7 sages creates a spiritual network capable of containing and ultimately banishing the forces of darkness. The healing of each region, the restoration of the Goron's freedom, the thawing of Zora's domain, the cleansing of the temples, shows that victory over evil requires active effort to repair damage rather than simply removing the source of harm. The role of the Master Sword as both weapon and key emphasizes that the tools of restoration must be wielded by someone worthy of their power. The blade's ability to harm evil and unlock temporal barriers makes it an instrument of cosmic justice rather than mere destruction. The timeline split at the story's conclusion represents the ultimate restoration, the return of innocence and possibility to a world that had been consumed by despair. Zelda's decision to send Link back to his childhood creates a new reality where the tragedies of the adult timeline need never occur. However, this restoration comes with its own costs and complications. The knowledge Link retains creates a burden that no child should bear, while the prevention of the adult timeline means that the growth and relationships formed during that period are lost forever. Based on Link's subsequent journey in Majora's Mask, we can infer that this psychological burden would prove quite significant for the young hero. The eternal cycle. The ending of Ocarina of Time, rather than providing simple closure, establishes the foundation for an eternal cycle of conflict and resolution that will define future ages. The timeline split creates multiple possibilities for how this cycle might unfold, but the fundamental pattern remains consistent across all variations. Ganondorf's final vow of revenge, delivered even as he is being sealed away, establishes that evil cannot be permanently destroyed, but only contained until circumstances allow its return. This acknowledgement of evil's persistence creates a universe where heroism is not a single achievement, but an ongoing necessity. The scattering of the Triforce pieces ensures that future conflicts will center around the same divine artifacts that defined Link's adventure. The balance between power, wisdom, and courage becomes a recurring theme that connects different heroes across different eras. The establishment of the Master Sword as a recurring element creates continuity between different heroic cycles. Each Link who draws the blade becomes part of a tradition that transcends individual identity, connecting them to both past and future heroes. The sage's role as eternal guardians means that each generation of heroes will have access to divine assistance, but also that the burden of protection extends beyond any single individual. The network of spiritual guardians ensures that knowledge and power will be preserved for future needs. The music and stories that survive from Link's adventure become the foundation for future legends, inspiring new heroes while also providing practical knowledge about the nature of evil and the methods needed to combat it. Conclusion. The Song of Time Eternal. And so concludes our deep dive into the complete story of the Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. We've discovered how a simple forest boy became the hero of time, how the pursuit of power corrupts even the mightiest kings, and how the price of victory can sometimes exceed the cost of defeat. The legacy of Link's adventure continues to resonate through the ages, its echoes heard in every timeline that branches from that pivotal moment when a child drew a sacred sword and changed the world forever. The story of Ocarina of Time reminds us that heroism is not about seeking glory or power, but about accepting responsibility for protecting what matters most. Link's willingness to sacrifice his own happiness for the sake of others establishes a standard of selflessness that elevates the entire narrative beyond simple adventure into the realm of genuine mythology. The game's exploration of time, memory, and consequence creates a philosophical framework that enriches every aspect of the adventure. The questions it raises about the nature of identity, the weight of knowledge, and the price of change continue to resonate long after the final credits roll. The musical themes that weave throughout the story serve as both gameplay mechanics and emotional connections, showing how art and beauty can serve as weapons against darkness, while also preserving the bonds that make life worth protecting. The rich world building that creates distinct cultures, complex political relationships, and layered historical backgrounds transforms Hyrule from a simple fantasy setting into a living world with its own internal logic and emotional depth. Most importantly, the story's conclusion, with its timeline split and bittersweet resolution, acknowledges that victory always comes with costs, and that even the most complete triumph leaves questions unanswered and prices to be paid. Next time on Lore to Action, we'll explore another thrilling topic from gaming's greatest adventures. Until then, keep adventuring through those incredible worlds, fellow explorers, and remember that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones that nobody else will ever know about. Thank you for joining me on this epic journey through one of gaming's most beloved and complex narratives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Hero of Time's adventure, please give this video a like and subscribe for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's most fascinating lore. Your support helps me continue creating these detailed analyses of the stories that have shaped our medium and captured our imaginations.